asked Amanda if it'd be all right to bring my notes out here, because I've been terrified about speaking without notes, and she said, "We're not Nazis." So thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to start by saying that I actually got to choose the theme for tonight, not because I'm special, but just because I was the first on board, and I immediately picked "This Must Be the Place," a phrase that has no resonance for me whatsoever. So why did I pick it? I picked it because it's similar to another phrase, which does have resonance for me, and that phrase is, "This is the place." Does anybody here recognize the significance of that phrase, "This is the place"? No Mormons in the house? Not even Tony Kushner? No? Okay. Well, "This is the place" are words spoken by Brigham Young from a hill above the Salt Lake Valley on a July day in 1847. He had just led a whole lot of people from Nauvoo, Illinois, across the prairie to the edge of what he considered Zion. And when he saw it, he said, "This is the place." Okay, so this may be surprising, but I'm not a Mormon. I'm actually exactly what I look like, a Jewish woman from New York. So why do I know so much about Mormons? And that's actually a really great story. It's even a story that involves the public theater, but it's not the story I'm going to tell tonight. More important than the fact that I'm not a Mormon is the fact that I'm an atheist, and I became an atheist at the age of 8. I was sitting on a park bench in Central Park. Yes, I know which bench it was. I pass it sometimes. I say, I remember what happened there. How that happened is also a great story, but it's also not the story I'm going to tell tonight. I can't speak for all atheists, but this one is fascinated by other people's religious faith. And I think that's probably why I've written about religious faith in my novels. And it's also why, if you are a friend of mine and you are a religious person, I have interrogated you, and I see one right there, sorry. I will again. It's just something I'm compelled to do because other people's religious faith fascinates me. And I think that's because, even though I'm pretty sure I'm right, and I think we should all be atheists, part of me still believes that if you believe, you are better than I am. And I can't really explain that, but it means that even terrible people who I could name who are maybe in Congress right now, who are religious believers and who do terrible, terrible things are somehow better than I am because they have made this bargain with the unknown. Again, I can't defend it, but that is in fact what the story I'm going to tell you is about. So this is a story that in our family we refer to as the Tom Hanks story. And you're about to hear all about why that's the case. I've told it many times, but I've never told it in public. This is the first time, and I think it might be the last time. We'll have to wait and see what happens. This is a story about something that happened many years ago in Lancaster County, Amish country. Our kids were young. They're not young anymore. They're sitting over there. They were, at that time, 18 months and 8 years old. And my husband and I decided to take our family to Amish country for a little holiday. We'd been there before we had kids. We had a lovely time, and we wanted to go back with our adorable children. So we called up the inn, the romantic inn where we had stayed before we had children. And guess what? They didn't want our adorable children. They didn't want any children. So I know this is hard for people who are not elderly like myself to remember, but in the olden times, you couldn't just go to a computer and plug in Lancaster County inns that accept children. You had to make a phone call, maybe leave a message, wait for a callback, have a conversation, and then they would tell you that they didn't want your kids, and they would maybe give you another inn that you could call. So this went on and on. I must have talked to 8 or 10 inns in Lancaster County, and finally, I found one that agreed to take us with our adorable children. I got a confirmation in the mail about a week later. This was something else that happened pre-internet. You got mail with a confirmation, and in this case, the confirmation also had a brochure. And the brochure was really very pretty. I mean, I thought, maybe we've lucked out here. It was an old building, and there were farm animals. There were, it just looked like a real cozy place. And it had something I wasn't expecting. It had a celebrity endorsement. Guess who from? So here's what the endorsement said. It said, "Thank you for another wonderful retreat from the limelight. What would you say to a movie shot in Lancaster County? Your friend, Tom Hanks." And I thought, okay, interesting. So we arrived at the inn, and it was a little bit of a letdown because it wasn't that pretty. It wasn't really a country place. It was more suburban. There were animals, but they were kind of in a different field. The place was very, how should I put this? It was very Christianity forward. There was a lot of Bible, and they were apparently part of a network of Christian inns, and they were very proud of this, and there were all these kind of certifications all over the place. They also wanted us to say grace. So it might shock you to know that I do not come from a family where we say grace. But I'm also very well brought up, and I'm a polite person. And when I saw that the innkeeper and his wife wanted us to bow our heads and say grace, I bowed my head and I said grace. And I remember kicking my daughter under the table. Bow your head, say grace. She probably didn't know what I was talking about. It didn't matter because this innkeeper and his wife hated me. It was so obvious. It was beyond cold. He was so hostile. He said really nasty things about New York. You know what that means, right? And I thought, well, is he just like a garden variety anti-Semite, or is there something else going on here? I thought maybe he was offended that my husband and I have different names. Maybe he thought we weren't married to each other. But nothing I did helped. It was really unpleasant, really nasty, actually. And it wasn't very restful. But you know what? We weren't there to stay in the inn or befriend the innkeepers. We were there to experience Amish country and go visit Amish farms and eat pies and look at quilts. And I remember we took the kids on a hayride. We had a lot of fun. One evening in our room, I found the guest book, the inn's guest book, and there, we were looking through it, and there, right in front of us, was the testimonial from Tom Hanks. He had written, just as it said in the brochure, "Thank you for another restful retreat from the limelight. What would you say to a film made in Lancaster County? Your friend, Tom Hanks." Okay. So finally, on the last morning, it was time to leave, and I went to find the innkeeper's wife to write her a check. My husband was out in the car with the kids, putting them in their car seats, and I really just wanted to write her the check and get out of there. But she wanted to write me a receipt, which meant that I had to wait for her to find a pen and then find a piece of paper, and then I had to wait for her to slowly write the receipt. So, of course, I'm gushing away. Oh, we had such a wonderful time, and we did this, and we'll definitely come back. No. And she's, chilly. She wasn't as bad as her husband, but she was pretty chilly. So, of course, I talked more. And what I said was, what a lovely quote this is from Tom Hanks. And she said, yes, he loves it here. And I said, well, how did he come to stay here? She said, well, he came once and he really loved it, and now he comes every year. And I thought, okay. And I probably said something like, well, that's just great. And I could tell that whatever I was saying was making it worse. It had gotten worse, and she was clearly struggling with something. And And finally, she stopped writing and she said, he's not that Tom Hanks. And I said, what? And she said, no, his name is Tom Hanks. But he's not that Tom Hanks. And I said, what Tom Hanks is he? And she said, well, he's an electrical engineer from North Carolina. And he came up here one year to do I think she said like a model airplane convention. And he stayed with us and he really liked it and now he comes back every year. And I said, so what does he mean when he talks about the limelight and making a movie in Lancaster County? And she said, I have no idea. So, I couldn't wait to get out to the car and tell my husband this, but on a deeper level, I was enraged because I may have mentioned, I'm an atheist, but I had always kind of ceded the higher moral ground to people who are believers, and these people had lied to me about Tom Hanks. The letter of the law, they had told the truth. She was very clear on that they had told the truth. His name was Tom Hanks, but it was a lie, and she knew it, and I knew it. And, even all these years later, I still can't believe it. They lied about Tom Hanks. Okay, all right, so technically, that is the end of the story, but it has 2 codas, and I'm going to tell you both of the codas. I'm going to tell them out of order. So, the first coda is that I met Tom Hanks. I was at a dinner party with him, and I sat next to him at dinner. And all through dinner, I'm thinking, should I? No, I'm not gonna do it. But should I? So I did, of course. And I said, listen, I have to tell you this story. And I started to tell him the story, and I could see he was getting more and more kind of tense. And when I got to the part where the innkeeper's wife said, it's not that Tom Hanks, he let out this this long sigh of relief. And I said, why are you relieved? And he said, I was getting worried that I had done it, that I had, I'm sure he'd been in a lot of inns and written in a lot of books, but anyway, not that one as it turned out. Okay, so that's the first coda. Here's the second coda. About 5 years after these events, I was in my daughter's bedroom. She was then about 13 years old, still adorable, of course. Maybe not quite as adorable, but still adorable. And I don't know what I was doing in there. I don't remember if I was looking for something or just cleaning up. She had all of this paper, stacks and piles of paper, and I was going through it, and suddenly I found myself looking at the thing, the page from the guest book. Yes. What was the page from the guest book of the Christian Inn in Lancaster County doing in my daughter's bedroom in Princeton, New Jersey, 5 years later? And of course, we all know why it was there. She had taken it. She had ripped it right out of the guest book because she could not resist. Who could resist? It was Tom Hanks, It was Woody. And I, as I've mentioned, very upstanding moral person, and my first thought was absolute horror, and what were we going to do about this? And I was going to have to write a letter, and she was going to have to write a letter, and we were going to have to send it back to these people at the Christian Inn. And then I just thought, nah. And I never did. I threw it out instead, and that is the end of the Tom Hanks story.